Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibiers? Hope you're having a really good Monday, and I hope everybody had a great Christmas. We did. It was wonderful. Grammy still hasn't made it home yet from the rehab facility. She just needed a few more days to get stronger, but she's doing amazing. I think by Wednesday she'll be here, so that's all good. And so we're going to jump back in because, things don't stop for the holidays when it comes to true crime. Got a lot of updates in the University of Idaho case and the Madalina Cojocari case, as well as Kason and Kyair Thomas. Some surprising news of how the boys were found. But first, music fact of the day. I love Jimmy Buffett. My dad's a salty. He was raised in Jacksonville, Florida. And so Jimmy Buffett just kind of fits our vibe. But interestingly enough, he only had one top 10 single, and that was Margaritaville, which only reached number 8. Other than that, no other top 10 singles for him, which is crazy because he had some good stuff. So anyways, all right, let's jump into the University of Idaho murders. 6 weeks later, still no suspect that we know of, no arrests. But some things have come out in the last few days. I kind of compile what's official. There's so much misinformation about this case and speculation online that there's not always updates every day. So this is kind of covering from about last Thursday to now. And the driver who gave Kaylee and Maddie a ride home that night after they left the food truck has broken his silence. And he talked to News Nation. And he said, I have a very good memory. I was not followed. There was nothing weird about that night, nothing strange going on the street that they lived on. He said there were no people in cars with their lights on, just a normal night on Greek Row. He said you could hear the thumping from the frat house, from the music down the street, but that's normal for that area. He dropped the girls off at the foot of the driveway, and the police, however, did not seek him out after the murders. And so when he saw the murders on TV, he reached out to police and wanted to turn over all of his digital information to clear himself, including a timed receipt from a Taco Bell. He was never a suspect, cleared pretty quickly. And also, he had given the girls rides home several times in the past, so he was familiar with them. And Police Chief James Fry talked to Brian Enton and asked if they were getting any closer to finding the killer or killers. And Fry said they're continuing to investigate, and he's confident they will have a conclusion to this. They've done 250 interviews, which is a ton behind the scenes, 6 weeks. I didn't do the math, but you figure out how many people a day that is they're talking to. And when asked if things were handled properly from the beginning, a lot of people have been quick to say maybe the crime scene wasn't secured. Remember, a week later, or over a week later, we saw them taking those tire impressions from in front of the house, or the tire marks. And there's been speculation that too many people were on that crime scene. It was just kind of in and out for a lot of people. But he said they've handled it properly. The crime scene was secured, and they called the state lab to collect evidence. And he says that how they did things initially on scene will help solve the case eventually. He was also asked about worried parents and students with holiday breaks coming to an end probably next week for them. And he said they're on campus a lot. They're doing patrols, but people need to be vigilant, stay aware of their surroundings, and look out for one another. They want the students to come back to Moscow, but he said that's a family decision. He said they're putting additional security on campus, giving out personal safety alarms, and also having self-defense workshops and having stalking awareness talks. So they're trying to make people feel at ease. They don't know where the suspect is, essentially. They don't know if this person is in Idaho or not. So he just said people need to stay aware. But we also know from last week, the school said they were going to be a little less flexible with that online learning. So they might want to rethink that until they get the suspect. So they are also still asking for tips on this white car, the Elantra, that was spotted on surveillance near the residence at the time of the murders. He said he wasn't sure how long that crime scene was going to be active and roped off. We know last week investigators were back in that house, so still very active. Now, Brooke Miller, who is the aunt of Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, Jack, who has been the subject of so much online speculation and rumor and just people posting personal information, even though authorities have said he's not a suspect. She's speaking out, and she talked to the New York Post. And if you remember, Kaylee tried to call him several times just shortly before the murders, maybe 20 minutes or less. And she said that ultimately he's just crushed. He's lost the love of his life, and he's devastated that what she says half of America still thinks he could be a suspect and could be responsible for her murder. She said the phone calls were investigated and he was cleared very early on November 23rd is the date she gave. She said right now he's surrounded by family and friends to deal with this, and they all thought that ultimately Kaylee would be the one that he would marry and have kids with. But about 3 weeks before the murders, Kaylee broke up with him. And in spite of him being sad about the breakup, they were still friends and it was amicable. Now, remember, Kaylee was moving to Texas for a marketing job that she had just got. She was going to go on a trip to Europe, had just got her new car. But his aunt said he's struggling about the decision to return to school because his life was so intertwined with Kaylee's there. And I get that. Now, she has started an online fundraiser to help raise money so Kaylee's family can hire a private investigator. And another note, a woman was walking her dog around 8 a.m. the morning of the murders, and she was the one that saw the door to the house wide open. Remember, it was November. It's cold in Idaho, and she thought that was odd. So Maddie's dad talked to the spokesman.com and said the day Maddie was murdered, he had went to a movie, and Maddie's mom texted him to have him call her. He texted back and said he would call her in a minute, but she called him back, and he said that's something that never usually happens. She said for him just to come over, and his gut just told him this is something with Maddie, something's going on. And he was going over kind of all the bad things that could be wrong, and nothing could have prepared him for what they told him. He said, we don't even know what to say to each other. We're just both sobbing, and we cried together on the phone. He said, there's just no words for any of that. Him and his ex, Maddie's mom, were together for 5 years, but they split up and maintained a really good relationship for Maddie while she was growing up. He said Maddie was smart and funny and a big go-getter. She was easy to be around as a kid and never really got into much trouble, and everybody just loved her. He said after 6 weeks, he still has so many questions that he thought would be answered by now, but he's just waiting. He said investigators for him have gone above and beyond to keep him up to date on the investigation. He said the lead investigator actually calls him daily with any developments that they can tell him, answering any questions he might have. And if he happens to miss a call from the investigator will connect with family members to make sure he's okay, which I think is really, really sweet. And he said on the day of the vigil, actually in Moscow, he spent 3 hours talking to investigators about the case. He said he tries to stay away from the online speculation, saying it's hard for me to read all of these articles. I can get all my news about it right there from the investigators. And he doesn't have to try and sort of sort through all the misinformation that is online. He said from the very beginning, he knows that people just don't get away with stuff like this with DNA and surveillance and everything else that investigators can use to find a suspect. He said that he had family coming in town over Christmas, and also they'll be having her funeral soon. It sounds like maybe even this week. He said them being there will help, but he just has so many mixed emotions. He said, I'm so proud to be able to say that she was my daughter and what she was doing with her life and where she was headed. She was living the life that she deserves. Kaylee's dad talked to CNN and said they're struggling, but they also have a lot of people surrounding them, supporting them, and helping them cope through the holidays. He said, we want to take time away. We don't want to be on the circuit. We just want to relax in knowing that those officers are there. And he says they're the best of the best. And it's definitely comforting knowing they're on the case. And now it's time for a word from our paid sponsor of the week, Wondery by Amazon. Scamfluencers is a podcast from Wondery that tells the unbelievable true stories behind some of the world's most infamous scams, swindlers, and con artists. Recently, they covered the rise and fall of Martin Shkreli, who gained prominence in 2015 when his pharmaceutical company raised the price of a life-saving drug by 5,000%. Hailed by Wall Street, but vilified by Main Street, the ensuing scandal garnered attention from the federal government. And they soon learned price hikes were only the tip of the iceberg, and Shkreli had even deeper secrets he was hiding. Charges were filed, but the arrogant Cojocari would not go down without a fight. I love this podcast because it exposes the scams that many people fall victim to, and it also brings awareness to the scams we have no choice of falling victim to, such as the pharmaceutical scam with Martin Cojocari. It helps me protect the people I love by exposing scams from social media influencers, fashion, finance, health, and wellness scams that are far too common in today's online world. You should listen too, because at the end of the day, if you're online, you're at risk. Follow Scamfluencers wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen ad-free on the Amazon Music or Wondery app. Speaking of that white car that police want to find, he said that they showed a clip of where the camera was so that you could get an idea of what street that was being filmed on. And he said it would be suspicious for a vehicle just to be rolling around at 3 a.m. He thinks they have a good reason to talk to that person and see what's going on during that time. That was actually Kaylee's dad talking. Didn't mean to confuse that a bit. He also addressed the online sleuthing where people are sharing personal information about people who have not been named as suspects. This is all independent investigations from amateur sleuths. And he pleaded, please don't go after these people. Don't take pictures of their homes. They don't want that. They're not after that at all. Fox News showed a photo of someone who say they is unidentified. It looked to me though it was Kaylee's dad. I could be wrong, but coming and retrieving her Range Rover that she actually bought shortly before her murder, and in fact was why she was back in Moscow, was to show the car off. And you can see officers helping him scrape the ice off the windshield before he eventually drives away in it. So I believe they're starting to clear those cars and give them back to the families at this point. And also, we've heard from former tenants who lived in this house since the murders, and they've kind of collectively said you don't hear much from the basement area. However, one tenant who did live in that house for a few years told Fox News it's a creaky old house and you can hear footsteps on every floor. He personally had a bedroom on the second floor above the first floor bedrooms and said the person who lived below him could always hear him walking around and also using his little roller chair. And so just a little dispute. I guess maybe it's sort of your perception of what is loud and what's not. But still, just weeks and weeks later, over a month and a half, almost a month and a half later, nothing. It seems like this is maybe headed towards the white car. That seems to kind of be that key piece right now to me that they're trying to put together. There's been some false alarms with the car in Eugene, Oregon, which they determined was not related. So it was kind of weird, though. It didn't have a license plate. It was crashed. It was empty. We all kind of thought, okay, we're getting somewhere, but nothing. So that's kind of it with that investigation as of right now. I'll keep an eye on it. Anything comes up, I'll hop on and do something else. We're going to move on to Madalina Cojocari. As you know, she was the girl who was not reported missing for weeks. Her mom and her stepdad have both been arrested. They're behind bars for failing to report her disappearance. The FBI had released some new photos of Madalina showing her with horses, saying you can see the pure joy she feels when taking her plastic ponies to the beach. And she enjoys riding the real pony named Rain. And I will upload those to the drive. The link will be in the description. I see here on YouTube that did not switch over to the current photos. Her stepdad's Facebook, interestingly enough, was wiped on Friday afternoon and a new photo was uploaded. So I'm thinking maybe somebody that knows him has scrubbed that clean and updated that. Her mom's Facebook has a lot of videos where she speaks in Russian, Romanian, and English about violence and self-knowledge. Her mom, Diana, was on a European weight loss show back in 2014, and a Romanian journalist named Lucifina Pascal said she showed her engagement ring on the air. However, she did not know her husband before they met and got engaged. It was very sudden. They met online. He's older than her and traveled to Moldova, where he proposed after meeting in person. The two will be back in court this Wednesday for a bond hearing, and hopefully they just set no bond. They've been in the house taking photos. I showed some video of that on the last episode, but we really haven't heard any updates as far as the search into where this poor child is. Just not looking promising, y'all, unfortunately. So we're going to move on to Kason and Kyair Thomas. And this is a mind-blowing story, y'all. See this woman right here with the red arrow pointed to her? I'm gonna tell you how she fits into this, and it just was amazing to read this today. I really hope mainstream media picks up on this and puts these cousins' faces far and wide because they are the true heroes of this story. So the Indiana Star reported that these two women from Indianapolis actually helped find missing Kason. Cheyenne Delmar, who is the woman right here with that red arrow pointing to her, said she bought toys from a woman who called herself May at a gas station Tuesday, and Cheyenne agreed to give this woman a ride to the Family Dollar. They exchanged some phone numbers to maybe have Cheyenne buy some more toys. But on the ride to the Family Dollar, the woman became really erratic. So Cheyenne took some video of her with her cell phone. And then she saw the mugshots on Facebook the next day and thought the woman looked a lot like the woman she had encountered the day before and given the ride to, and that was Jackson, the suspect who's now been arrested. She decided to get her family's input before potentially having this woman arrested. So she shared the video with a cousin as well as the photo of the mugshot, and they both agreed this looks a lot like the woman she gave the ride to, who was also wanted for kidnapping the boys. So the day after the encounter, the woman who is the suspect called Cheyenne back and about buying more toys. They had talked about it the day before, so she was following back up. Cheyenne really didn't know what to do and didn't answer that call and actually waited until the next day to call her back. So they arranged to meet at a home, and Cheyenne brought her cousin this time to have somebody else there with her. So the plan they came up with was to take the woman to the store and call police, but they kind of didn't want it to be known they were the ones turning her in. They called the Columbus police, who told them to call the Indianapolis police. Then they kind of had some trouble conveying to dispatch the woman that they were with could likely be the suspect in the double kidnapping of the twin boys. She said they actually hung up because they became so frustrated and took her to a few more stores, kind of hoping she might shoplift or something and draw attention to herself, get arrested, and then they could tell the story. They didn't want to take her to the police station because they were worried she might run. But the cousin called police throughout the shopping trips to kind of tell them why they thought this was the suspect in the double kidnapping. Police called them back while the suspect was in the car, and they didn't want to alert the suspect. So they pretended to be talking to a friend and was telling who was actually dispatched that they were driving on I-65 South. So police caught up with them, pulled them over, and made the suspect Jackson got very quiet. And the officer initially was skeptical that this was the suspect and told the women that they should take her to a shelter. But then the girl's cousin showed the officer a mugshot of Jackson, and she was arrested around 2 p.m. on Thursday. So the Indianapolis Star was shown an email from detectives to the cousins that was time-stamped at 3:33 p.m. on Thursday, just an hour and a half after the arrest, saying, "You guys did fantastic. Because of your help, we are so much closer to finding that baby." Also, the cousin posted 2 hours before it was announced that Jackson was in custody that the child was still missing, but they had her. So knowing the temperatures, get this, y'all, this is where these women went into full on protective mode. And let's just take care of this right now. They knew the temps were going to plummet. Remember, we had that big cold front snowstorm that came through the whole daggum country. I'm going to tell you, man, my bones hurt as soon as I stepped outside the door this weekend. They focused on finding this child. So they found a bus schedule actually in the back seat where Jackson had been sitting. And they decided to drive that bus route and look for that stolen Honda, knowing it would be covered with snow because it hadn't been driven in a day or so. At first, they had no luck. And what happens? They just happen to get hungry and see a Papa John's. They see the Honda in the parking lot, which was covered in snow. They saw the baby in the back seat, but they didn't hear anything, and the door was locked. So they found officers in a nearby pizza joint and told them, "There's a baby in this car." At 6:40 p.m., a call came over the radio that says, "We've been alerted that the missing child may be located over here at a vehicle at 10th and Indiana." Moments later, another call came across that radio that said, "We have custody of the child that's missing." While the officer was on the radio confirming they had found Kason, the women can be heard kind of screaming some relief in the background that they had in fact found the missing child. Cheyenne said, "At that point, we didn't believe we really did this. We really did the unthinkable." That's her there with the red arrow pointing to her, and just an amazing story of how vigilant citizens can do the right thing in the right way and make a huge difference. I hope that in the Idaho murders that it takes a turn with the online sleuthing, because you see when you do things right and you don't jump to conclusions and do things just because you have a hunch, uh, it can be successful. And this baby is back with his twin brother and his mom and his family for Christmas. So a big, big happy ending. So that's kind of the new updates I have for today. Kind of a short episode, but wanted to get this stuff out before it got stale. And I'll be back tomorrow with a whole new episode. I am de-Christmasing all day. I'm the type of person, usually I have it down Christmas night, y'all. I'm not even kidding. I can't get Christmas stuff down fast enough, but I needed some sleep and I got that. So on to it. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day and we will see you real soon, y'all.